Good evening, everybody. I had promised that I will do a short live today on the 16th of December, just to problematize a little bit this very holiday and how we blacks respond to it. It's the 16th today. Firstly, I welcome you all, those who are joining. We're going to have a very short live. I just want to share with you some of my unrefined observations about 16 December, this very day, and how we black people have been socialized to respond to it. The 16th of December, of course, historically is a very important day. We know that the original Umkhonto weSizwe was formed on this day, and also our current Umkhonto weSizwe was formed also on the 16th. And this very day correlates with the historic defeat of our people at the Battle of Blood River. The Boere, they defeated the Zulu warriors. And really, that is the origin of the date. White people, before they went to war with us, entered a covenant with their God and said, God, please help us defeat these Kafirs. And if you do so, we'll build a church. And in fact, there is a church in KwaZulu-Natal which was built by the Afrikaners after the defeat of the Zulu warriors in that Battle yaseNcome. You know, I love that song. Encome, encome, impi yaseNcome kwaphela abantu. Impi yaseNcome kwaphela abantu. That song is sung in remembrance of that historic defeat. So, white people after King Dingani had bulala abathakathi, white people organized to avenge that killing of Retief, one of the key Afrikaner leaders, by King Dingani. And that battle happened in Ncome, and it was such a big, colossal defeat. Of course, the Afrikaners exaggerated the number of blacks which were murdered. There's a mythology around the fact that the river turned into blood of the Zulu warriors which were murdered by the Voortrekkers. The point is, this day, white people made it a public holiday, even under apartheid, to celebrate our defeat. It was called Dingansdag. So how is it possible? When I grew up, on the 16th, black people go crazy. We go to picnics, we get drunk. What are we celebrating? How do black people get into a point where, on the day of their defeat, they join, in a sense, the celebration of their defeat by the enemy on the 16th? The drunkenness in the black community of this day is a celebratory kind of madness. But what I want us to do is to reflect on how is this possible that black people end up celebrating their own defeat, celebrating with the enemy celebrating the defeat of black people, and Tina, we are celebrating our defeat. You know, there's a Western big philosopher, Descartes. He says, basically, the position of being human is the fact that you think. I think, therefore I am. I want to argue that that applies to the Western type of a person. Black people were not driven by thought. And white people understand that, and that's why they brought their religion. That is why we sing Dumela Fela. Black people, I think in general, were more animated by feelings. I feel, therefore I am. And the white oppressor understood that, and that is why they create these moments where we get lost into feelings, celebratory feelings, celebrating our defeat. Because the 16th is a day where we should be sitting down and reflecting on how we lost the Battle of Blood River. We must be commemorating the warriors who stood up against the system but were defeated. Instead, we joining the celebration. The drunkenness that goes on in the black community is part of this process of socializing the oppressed into the idiom of the oppressor. The mind, you know, that's why Steve Biko makes the big thing about the mind. The oppressor understands how the African behaves, how we respond to things. And that is why they create these big moments, such as the 16th, and it's a day where we go out and we celebrate. Black people never ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? Ridumela fela. And the oppressor has worked into his system of oppression this very response of black people, unthought, celebratory commitments. That's what explains why we would end up celebrating with the oppressor our defeat. When the oppressor is celebrating and honoring their God for avenging the defeat suffered in the hands of black people on this day. We responded as black people, of course, through Mkhonto weSizwe in 62, where on this day, it was precisely because the liberation movement thinking was that this day we were defeated, this day we launch a new battle to avenge that defeat. But that thinking is limited to the liberation movement, and even in the liberation movement, it is not such a big project to say, comrades, the reason we are doing this thing on the 16th is because we were defeated in that Blood River Engome battle, and we are therefore organizing ourselves to avenge that defeat. But the point I'm driving at tonight is simply how black people have no thinking around this day. I'm talking about the general population of black people that goes out to celebrate this day, celebrating, joining the oppressor. Because the oppressor celebrates our defeat. We are joining the oppressor in celebrating our own defeat on this day. It is a very clever trick the oppressor is using, understanding, of course, as I say, this idea that black people are driven more by feelings than thought. White people are driven by thought. They think, therefore they are. We feel, and therefore we are. And this is why we so quickly forgive, for instance. Forgive and forget. It's a feeling. We forgive the oppressor. We don't insist on revenge, avenging wrongdoing against us. We don't do that. And the white system understands this black response and this black temperament, which is based on feelings. And therefore they create these moments where we can be lost in feelings of celebration, and then they bring alcohol. This day, carry 16, yo. Harenwe. We get lost in drunkenness. And that's part of how the white project controls the black existence. That job of liberating the minds of black people is an almost impossible job. As you can see even now with these pressures created by the ANC, how quickly our people are saying, Maburu nereja rena le mmereko ka nako ya Maburu. It is precisely this. I think those of us who are serious about liberating black people, I think we need to study black people much more carefully and much more deliberately to understand how black people respond to things and what drives black action. Because if we don't do that, we're going to continuously fail. You know, like the example I keep on making, that the Democratic Alliance represent about 7% of the population, because that's the number of white people. But it gets about 22 to 23% of the votes. Who votes for the Democratic Alliance? It is black people. Why is that? Because the thought process of the oppressing machine tells black people that indeed it is better to be led by white people than the corrupt black ANC. But the point that I really wanted to raise today is how we blacks are available to the oppressor project through mobilizing our temperament, which I argue is generally devoid of thought. It is a disposition to celebration, to feelings, which have been manipulated against us. The white system understands that the black people are calibrated by feelings. And therefore, they create these moments where we can get into that moment of feeling, of celebrating, of dance. And alcohol calibrates that process. That is why today, Kadi 16, Renwa, Retahwa, Ritumets. And we never ask the question, why was this day designated? How these days they come about? What are white people celebrating? What are we celebrating? So part of the liberation project for black people is to bring forcefully into the black existence the question of why. Why are we doing the things that we are doing? Because in general, that question does not arise, and this makes us available to system that oppress us, and we end up supporting those systems because we don't ask the question why. This day, the 16th, is celebrated by white people to thank their God for defeating us eNgcomi. We are not celebrating. We are supposed to commemorate, to think about those warriors who perished, and to think about the moments that we organized resistance again to avenge the defeat of Engcobo. So, black people, the 16 a se letsatsi la go tagwa. Ke a le kopa ka tswetswe. The 16 ke letsatsi le tshwantseng gore re dule fatshe, re tibise maikutlo, go gopola masole a rona a ileng a latlhegelwa ke botshelo ka ntlha ya gore ba ne ba lwela tikologo kgatlhanong le maburu. White people are celebrating the 16th to thank their God for defeating us. What are we celebrating? So, we need to teach each other history, but not only that, we need to teach ourselves to think. That is the key thing, how to think about things. Because thought is in real short supply amongst black people. We are easily duped into systems of oppression that oppresses us. And we celebrate those systems because we don't ask the question, why? Today is a big day. We must thank President Zuma for giving us some controversies again to give us a chance to fight. But this day is essentially a day when we bow our heads in remembrance of the heroes who took up arms against the colonizer and perished in that Battle of Blood River, Engcobo. It's not a day to get drunk and get lost in this drunken stupor, because that is what the white system wants of us black people. Not to think, but to be drunk and to celebrate. Black people, we celebrate at the slightest provocation. We are going to get drunk and we're going to celebrate. And the white system understood that, and it encouraged us on this day, 16. As black people, we go out, we get drunk, whilst white people are thanking their gods for defeating us. This is a day for pausing and to reflect on those warriors who died and the new struggles, and to ask the question, how far are we in avenging the deaths of those warriors who stood up against the colonizers and said, no, it cannot be done. The 16 Bagaetso ke letsatsi not la go tagwa. It's a day where we must pause to reflect on the black condition. But more importantly, we need to understand how the black mind functions. Because if we don't do that, we're going to end up in this very same repeated process of defeat by the white system. Because Makgowa are being very clever. They understand the black mind and they manipulate it all the time against black interests. Rob Herzog today is one of the biggest manipulators of the black mind. But the entire white system is organized to precisely deal with the black mind, including Christianity as a religion. It is organized to make sure that we don't fight, we don't demand justice, we don't want revenge, we are loving the enemy, we're giving the enemy the other cheek. These are systems of white which work the black mind. And as I say, we have to pause and reflect on how the black mind is so easily manipulated into supporting programs that are inimical to the black interest. So this day, they gave us alcohol. On this day, they let us get drunk while they thank their God, while they honor their soldiers for defeating us enormously. Tina, the idea of the battle has been erased completely from our minds. We don't remember what happened on this day. And that erasure is deliberate by the white system to make sure that we as black people do not organize ourselves and remember what happened to us and remember who the enemy is and remember what we lost. It is part of forgetting through mindless celebration and drunkenness for black people. This is a white system working itself through these mechanisms of controlling the black thought and specifically black feelings. As I say, we as black people must be suspicious of our feelings. We need to ask ourselves why we feel the way we do, because if we are not suspicious of our feelings, we're going to allow our feelings to consistently be used against us. So this day is not a day for getting drunk. It's a day for serious reflection on what happened in Ncome and the fact that we need to organize ourselves to fight to avenge the Ncome defeat, the Ncome loss of life, the Ncome warriors who stood up against the colonizer, but of course they were defeated. If we don't get this right, we're going to constantly be sitting where we are as black people. Black people, please, man. What is happening to us is a big tragedy. What happened to us is a big tragedy, and that tragedy continues because we are failing to ask the question why things are the way they are and why we continue to do certain things. Also, let us free the mind to free the land. Izwelithu.